Normally we open up the video with some preview shots of the model that we've just painted and we're about to do the tutorial on, but I kind of want to save the reveal of this guy till the end. You've seen a little bit of it on the thumbnail, but we can keep the whole thing pretty much a secret for the next few minutes. Today we're going to be painting a kind of candy coat metallic purple. Candy coat is a term used to describe usually a very thin kind of lacquer that you would put on top of something that's bright and shiny to tint it a certain color. And we're going to use techniques like that today in this video to show you how to paint pretty much anything you want as a metallic version of itself. Now we're going to be using purple in the video today, but you can do this with literally any color. There is a caveat to that. When we go through the right stage in the video, I'll explain to you where you might need to change this or tweak this recipe for another hue. That's fine though, honestly, you'll have no issues doing this with red, greens, blues, golds. I think I've just given some of it away right there. Let's get to it. And here we are. So the first stage is to prime your Mini. Now normally I wouldn't show this, but we're not using the regular Vallejo matte black primer because we're using a lot of metallics. We're using the gloss black primer. Sometimes you've seen it referred to maybe as the Mecha primer. Either way, whatever it is, make sure you buy the gloss version for this kind of thing. Now I bought it by mistake a while back and it's turned out to be extremely useful for our metallics. We've got a beautiful gloss finish. Now why is that important? One of the key features of a metallic object is that it is bright and shiny. It has a very gloss finish to it. So we're using some Vallejo black metallic right now to get a base coat over all of this. And look at how reflective that is. You can clearly see the reflection of my fingers in our finish. This is going to really help get that nice candy coat. Frequently when you see a candy coated army, it's basically all one color all over. There's no real depth and there's no highlights, and that's because it's very difficult to do unless you do it this way around. What we're doing in this step is we're laying down a brighter silver. We're using some gunmetal from Vallejo. This is going to give us a definite step change between our black metallic base coat and this. It's going to start building up a brighter highlight that we can use over the next step, and then some more things that we'll be doing later on to start giving our metallic finish a nice subtle set of gradients. You have to think ahead and plan for the final step when you're doing this. So I know that I'm going to put a purple finish over all of this. I need to work out now where my highlights should be, where my shadows should be, and how I'm going to make this look dynamic. Depending on what miniature you're doing, this might take a little bit of trial and error. So don't be afraid to use a test model and really work out where your values need to be before, of course, applying that all-important final layer. So there's our first highlight. We're coming in now with some Airbrush Metal Color Chrome. Now this paint is super thin, so I've done it 2:1 with Flow Improver just to help it avoid it drying on the needle and things like that, just to make sure we get a nice smooth flow over onto the miniature. This is a really, really, really shiny metal, and that's why we're using this as our final airbrushed highlight here. We're making sure we're hitting all of the areas we'd want to really pop out that transition, the brightest parts on the model, and we're making sure as well, like this section here, that we've got a nice set of contrast. So we have a bright transition on the hatch, but then we go into a darker part of the body. So we're using it here to ensure we have another point of interest that's very bright, very in your face. And certainly by the time this is looking purple, it's going to be really, really something. By the time you've got this all over the miniature, remember this is just a top hatch, we're going to see a lot of nice little bits of contrast, those nice transitions, and it'll be very, very interesting. In a similar way to how we did our airbrush gradients, we have to do the same thing with our shadows and our highlights. So here what we're doing is we're taking some Army Painter Dark Tone and we're hitting all of the recesses. So if you think about the normal way that you would do your painting, you would put some gradients down with the color you want the finished product to be. Then you would come in, you'd do your little recess shades, you'd add a little few edge highlights, and that's pretty much the model done. Here we're flipping all of that on its head. We've done our gradients with the airbrush. Now, like I said, we're taking that very, very dark black recess shade color. We're hitting all of the areas on the miniature that are going to need that. So things like the vents, any gaps between panels, all of that sort of stuff. And the reason that we're doing this now, and the reason that we'll be applying our brushed highlights in a second, is because when we put our final coat over the top of it, that purple that's going to make all of this worth it, we want our shadows to be a dark purple. We want our highlights to be a bright purple. And so by doing this now, and then laying that coat of paint down on top of it, that's what we're going to achieve. This is going to give you a miniature that looks like it really belongs, rather than a miniature that has a little bit too much of a dark shadow and a highlight that doesn't quite fit it. So there's our shadow layer laid down, all those recesses done. Next step is, of course, doing that highlight. We're using Scale Colors Speed Metal. Now, this is almost metallic white. This is a super bright silver, and we're putting this down anywhere that we would want an edge highlight to be. So we're picking out some of the panels, we're making sure we've got some nice attractive highlights on those areas. We'll of course make sure we do things like hit all the rivets and things like that. Anywhere that you would expect there to be an edge highlight on your miniature, that's where you do this. So for instance, right here at the corner of that panel, and we'll take that up almost all the way across the entirety of this piece of our armor. Now, earlier on I said that I would give you some ideas on how to use this kind of technique for any other set of colors. You could use a blue, green, whatever you want. I've done an Alpha Legion arm using a similar set of techniques that we're still kind of developing. We hadn't quite got to this level with them yet, so they aren't quite as polished as this. But for that I used a couple of dark silvers and then a blue followed by a green final layer to give me the right color. If I wanted to do a Candy Coat Blood Angels army, for instance, instead of using a silver base coat, I might use a set of golds. And the reason behind that is, of course, you're going to get a very rich, very deep metallic red by using that gold base coat. So depending on what your final color you're expecting it to be, and what you want for your plan, it might be that you change your base coat from the silver and the greys that we've got here into gold to give you a little bit more vibrancy and life. Next up, this is the important step. We're taking some beaten purple from P3. We are thinning this 8:1 with flow and brew, and look at how far away from the miniature my airbrush is. You need to use the very smallest amount of paint at this time, and you want that paint to be very diffuse when it hits the miniature. So work from a distance, work with a very small amount of paint coming out, and importantly, take your time. Wait till you see that purple start to work in, and then as it starts to build, just move your airbrush around. Make sure your airbrush passes on and off the miniature so you don't build up a large area of it all in one spot. Now, if you're enjoying this video, I'd encourage you to check out Patreon and Twitch. Every other week on Patreon, I release a video exactly like this one, and then every single week I release a written guide explaining exactly how to do other painting techniques. You'll get access to all of the tutorials on there, and maybe when a slot opens up again, you might even get yourself access to some painting lessons. Also on Twitch, I stream 4 shows a week. We stream Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday nights from 9 UK time. Currently we're in BST. And we also stream Saturday mornings from 11 AM. This weekend, we've got a phenomenal giveaway. We're doing an entire weekend's worth of streaming, starting from 10 AM Saturday morning. We'll be giving away a Tyranid army and a whole lot more. So come and check it out. Once you see we've got our purple down, might be you want to do another coat of it, and that's exactly what I did here. I let it dry, did the whole process again, and look at that purple. Now though, we need to get some details done, so let's do that in a snap, just like that. And there you go. We've got some details down. This stuff is ready to go on the miniature. Look at that purple. It still looks metallic, even next to our other metallics. And let's look at the big boy in all his glory. There you go, what an absolute beast. This guy will look outstanding on the battlefield. Certainly, he's going to need some obscuring terrain that's got actual line of sight blocking stuff to hide, because he is one bright, shiny boy. I did put a little, very thin coat of gloss varnish down over the purple. That's obviously helped with the shine, but it's really there to protect it. We used a very, very thin coat of paint. I want to make sure none of that scratches off. Let's give this guy the credit he deserves and go into some nice, beautiful photos. Don't forget, guys, if you liked the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment saying why you liked it or why you didn't like it, or just that it's Friday today. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon.